Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on Masechtas Zevachim Daf Pei Zayin. We're going to begin on the bottom of Pei Vav and Beis, the second to last line with the word Itmar. So we were learning in the Mishnah, we were discussing in yesterday's daf when it came to items that would burst or fall off of the Mizbeach, whether or not it should be returned. So we mentioned with regard to the Ivarim, which were supposed to be there, so we said before Chatzos, they could be returned. And therefore, there would be a din me'ila. However, Lachar Chatzos L'Yaser V'ein Mo'alan Behem. And there is not going to be a din me'ila because, as we saw in Rashi, it's Havid Luhu Davar Shenasis Mitzvahs V'ein Mo'alan Boy. Once the mitzvah has been done, there's no me'ila. So Pirshu Kainim Chatzos. Let's say that it was removed before Chatzos, so did you end up doing the mitzvah? Because it was supposed to stay there until Chatzos, but instead you took it off before the designated time. However, you ended up putting it back afterwards. So Rabbi Omer, as we continue to pay Zayin but Aleph, Chatzos Sheni Oichlasan. The following night can consume it. What does that mean? So Rashi says Chatzos Sheni Shel Lail HaMacharos. So it can still be consumed the next day. Rav Chisda Omer Amud Shachar Achalasan. It's actually the morning which is its consumption. So Amri and therefore you don't really have the second night to be able to do it again. So Amri Ve Rav, my time with Rav Chisda. Why does Rav Chisda say that you only have until Amud Shachar and that's it? Because Madach, when it comes to Chatzos, in which when it hits midnight, there's no din lina, Oisa Ichol, but it makes it so it's consumed. Says Rashi, that which fell on the ground, once it's Chatzos, you don't have to return it because it's considered to be it's fine. The truth is, you have the whole night that you could have put it up there. The pasuk says in Rashi, right? The whole night, it's not a problem. It can be up there. But also ichol, as we said, when it comes to the shiririm, the dried up meats, that we make a distinction before chatzos and after chatzos, it's considered to be ichol. So Amud Shachar Shasalina, the morning, which actually does create an issue of lina. Like for example, it says like you're supposed to eat it, the shlamim, and then v'yom shlishi be'esh yisarif. So enu din shayis ichol. So then it should certainly be considered to be ichol, and therefore this is the logic of Rav Chisda. He said, therefore, since there's a din lina on Amud Shachar, it should already be considered to be ichol to the point that there's no need to do it again, and that's it. Fine. Pirshu, so that's a machokas. Pirshu kodem chatzos. So let's say again, the Ivarim were separated before chatzos. V'hachzir la'achar amud shachar, not after chatzos, but let's say it was after amud shachar. So again, Rabbi Omer chatzos sheni achalasan. Rav Chisda, Rabbi in this case, will also say, do you have the following night? Not a problem. Rav Chisda Omer ein behen ichol oilum. There's no din ichol because you didn't do it at night properly. You waited until Amud Shachar, which is already din lina. So therefore, it's too late. The fact that you did it, you lost a chance. Says Rashi, the chol shepoikin yachzer, anything that fell off can go back. U'mu'alad min ad shiasa deshen. Maskav Rav Yosef, Aman Leimolan, the Chatzos B'Roshim Mizbeach Mishavil Hu Ichol. Who said that at Chatzos that it needs to be at that particular time on the top of the Mizbeach? Dilma Kol Heichen Mishkachel Hu Mishavil Ichol. Maybe even it's not on the Mizbeach. Why does it have to be a case specifically, as Rashi says? Hilkoch Pirshu Kodem Chatzos Nami, even if it was separated before, Harhein Ichol B'Chatzos, So it's considered to be like done at chatzos. V'fil hechzin lach chatzos. So shalchim itam hilchas Rabbi Yosef. So he said, in fact, the halacha is like this question of Rabbi Yosef, and as he points out that l'chayra it shouldn't make any difference the fact that if it's on the mizbeach or not. It also learns says it was put afterwards. Lo nehenen. You cannot get hana, but it says vol mo'alad. There's no din me'ila. V'chein tanabar kapara pishu kadam chatzos v'achzion lach chatzos. And it came back after chatzos. Yotzim midin me'ila. He says that it does remove its way of me'ila. Amar apapul abai v'chim yachar deshalchim itam hilchas Rabbi Yosef. So just for the fact that you sent over there, now all of a sudden hilchas Rabbi Yosef. Yomar Rabbi v'chein tanabar kapara. Rav Chisda b'may pligi. So in the argument, so Malay b'shemeinim, referring to the fats or the fatty limbs. Says Rashi, if he'll hukshu, will have ichol. It's not considered to be like consumed. The shumnon ma'akman miliasos deshen. The fact that it's still fat, so it's still ma'akev. Okay. Let's look at question 2. Evarim shapir shuma gabam mizbeach kaidem chatzais v'achzurin achar alosa shachar, which is what you said before. The im yesh behen ichol the imlatai. So does it have this din of it of ichol that was like consumed and when? So it's a machlokas. So ichol b'chatzais rishayin. Let's say it was being consumed at chatzais the first night. Even if it's not on the mizbeach, like Rabbi Yosef said, it shouldn't matter. It was shemanim. Let's say we're dealing with fatty limbs. Rav Chisda ein behen ichol oilam, u'rabba chatzos sheni oichlasam. So the whole machlokas is basically saying is dafka in this case of when it's referring to shemainim. So b'mini rava mi rabba. So you ask the question: Lina mo'eles b'rosh hamizbeach, or ein mo'eles b'rosh hamizbeach? So, does the fact that it is on the top of the mizbeach, does that have any distinction whatsoever with regard to the dinim of me'ila? So hechidam me'ila madol yardu. Let's say it's on top of the mizbeach and it was never taken down. So, and again, it was found in the morning on the top of the mizbeach. So hashta lanu ba'azara amrtolo yardu, that which we said that if it was in the azara, we're not going to take it down. So barosh shemazbech maboy ve'ela diyardu. So what? It wouldn't make any sense, says Rashi. Ela diyardu. We're talking about not that. It was taka on the mizbeach, right? Rather, it came off from the mizbeach after Amud HaShachar, and the question is it like other forms of lina that's going to be possible by Amud HaShachar? That is what the question is. So ve'ela di'ridai, it's down, right? So again, if we're talking about that it's still on the top of the mizbeach, so then that's not kasha. How about what if it's already down? So shulchan medamin and loy. Do we compare it to the shulchan? Says Rashi l'mizbech she'ein lechem upon him nisul olav nimlon boy lachar zmanoi. When it comes to the lechem upon him, as the Gemara now says, afil hein al hashulchan yomim rabim. Even the lechem upon him, the showbreads are on the shulchan for many days. Ein mekach klum. That's not considered a problem, and therefore maybe just like the lechem upon him, there's no din lina. So too over here. No dilma l'karka medaminan. Maybe we're going to compare it to the karka of the azara. Says Rashi, the haritzbas binyanhi kamaisav klisharis kashulchan. Is it comparable to the ground? Is it comparable to the klisharis just like the shulchan? So Malay ein lina b'rosh hamizbeach. He says there's no din lina on the top of the mizbeach. Kimim no lo. So Shema dietmar nivarim shalanu ba'azara mekativ haylech kol halayla. So you can continue to burn them all night. which is the normal practice. Lanu b'rosh Mizbeach, let's say it stayed over on the top of the Mizbeach, mekata b'hoich oilim. As long as it's on the Mizbeach, it's not a problem. There's no din lina. Yardu, let's say it was removed from the Mizbeach, so Rabbi Omer Yalu, Rabbi Omer Lo Yalu. So it's a machlokes, why Lo Yalu? Because it'll become puzzle, it became puzzle, so it can't go back on the Mizbeach. Shemamino Lo Kibim Minei Shemamina. It's obvious that he wasn't makabel at the fact that there's a machlokes here. Question 3. Heichen ein lina mo'elas l'kol yalma, heichen pligi mo'elas sham lina. So, ein lina mo'elas l'kol yalma al shulchan, that doesn't do anything, like the lechem, lavaina, etc. However, there's a machlokes when it comes to the mizbeach. Okay. All right. So, Kishem Shem is Bech Mekadesh Chulu. So we saw in yesterday's Mishnah, it says that just like the Mizbeach, that if it's on the Mizbeach, it's like Kadosh, so we say Im Olu Yardu, we don't take it off, referring to that which is fit for it, so to the Kevesh, so to when it comes to the ramp, and also just like the Mizbeach and the ramp, so too Kacha Kalim Mekachin, so too when it comes to the Kalim. Okay, so the Gemara says like this: what's the din? Does a kli sharis actually have the ability, just like if you have something puzzle on the mizbeach, so then we say imol yardu, so maybe it's the same, and it's the same thing also by the ramp. So how about the kli sharis? So I'm related to Nisua. What do you mean? Well, what's the question? Of course, it's going to be Mekadosh, just like a Mizbeach, just like the Kevesh, like the ram, because it says it explicitly in the Mishnah. We just said it. Obviously, he knew the Mishnah, so he's saying, is it a Lechatchila situation? That was his question. So actually, V'lo Indian Pidyon. We're not talking about a b'diavad thing of redemption. The question is a Lechatchila din that you could actually use a kli sharis for this matter. So that's the kasha. So hanami tinina. So you wanted to know if this is good. We also learn the same. We also learn this din when it comes to whether it's a chatchil or not. When it comes to kli sharis, as we continue to pay zayin lebeis, it says shekibu psulim, that it is makabel psulin. V'zarku as damo. Let's say you have this kli sharis, which was makabel psulin. V'zarku as damoi, or in other words, someone who's not fit to do the avoda does this, and he does the zrika. So my love, shekibu psulin v'zarku psulin. They did everything wrong. Whoa, shekibu psulin inami shezarku psulin. So how does this answer the question? It's an iboya. We don't answer the question, but we're basically saying, v'hader zarku psulin, v'lamui zarku mekabola ifsala. What's it mean that he's going to do zrika? It was already puzzled from Kabbalah. Ilav lashmi inan time of the zarku psulin hu the habi yivarim b'teres im olu yardu v'chatchilu yalu the isel basim zrikas psulin. Hazarku kasher and the chatchila nami yalu hevarim. Okay, so he said no, maybe not. Maybe it's, says Rashi, mishum he gufa itzrach lashminan im olu hevarim, if the limbs went up to the town of Mizbeach yardu. V'alfa pi shenifsul bezrika. Okay, avir mizbeach kemizbeach dami oiloi. The airspace over the mizbeach, does it have the same halachic status as the mizbeach itself? So let's say you hung a varim psulin in the avir, and you want to know, is it going to be kadosh, and therefore, because of that, it's like the mizbeach itself, and therefore imolu yardu, or do we say no, it's not like the mizbeach, and therefore you could take it down? So that's the basic idea of the question. So Tashma Kashem Shem Mizbeach Mekadesh Kaf Kevesh Mekadesh. Now V'iyamrit Avir Mizbeach Lav K'Mizbeach Dami. If you want to tell me the airspace is not like the Mizbeach, so Avir Kevesh Nami Lav Ki Kevesh Dami, then probably the airspace of the ramp is also not like the ramp. So Hechi Masik Lo Kevesh Mizbeach Havilei Yoroid. So how is it possible that a person can go from the ramp to the Mizbeach after all? Says Rashi, Haki magvale ba'avir hakevish havale yoroid. There's not kachim yardu yalu. Right? So basically, it shouldn't work. So by virtue of the fact that you're bringing up on top of a ramp, should be a raya that the avir of the Mizbeach is like the Mizbeach. It's like the Mizbeach. The answer is the nugget that he actually dragged it up the ramp. Because otherwise you can say, well, if he's carrying it, so it's like it's not really connected to the ramp. So it must be that the ramp is actually like it's like avir. It's also like the avir. So maybe it's mamish on the ramp itself that you're dragging it. Says Rashi, Goyrin Adam Mizbeach v'enu magbian. You never lifted it up. But avir yesh ben kevish Mizbeach. We did learn previously that there is actually a small space between the Mizbeach and the ramp. A very small space, a little bit of a small space. It had connected to Shevet ben Yamin and things of that nature. So there was definitely airspace by the ramp. So Ruba kevesh kevesh. Ruba Mizbeach Mizbeach. The majority to the ramp was the ramp, and the majority to the Mizbeach was the Mizbeach. In other words, the limb was mostly on it and not on the airspace. So therefore, the fact that there was a little bit of a space, that really was negligible. So Tishi Maha, answer from here. Hadamai Rabbi Rachama, Yesh Chibur Oilin Olo. What does that mean, Yesh Chibur? Says Rashi, Doloi Chashvinan Lahu Kaman the Mifras Vazlin Lahu Basar Ruba. We go after the majority. Oh, Ein Chibur. So, Olo, Tivshit Yesh Chibur. Apparently, we should say that it's attached, says Rashi. The Ein Chibur Kama Kama Demata Keneged Aver Ifsale. Then the air should be postling it. Halukasha. Tivshit. So you can actually, that's a good answer. So Maskeh Rabbi Rachana, the Amrit Aver Mizbeach Mizbeach Dami. If the airspace is like the Mizbeach, and therefore, if a psul goes up there, we say, Im Olo Yardu, so Oilo Sa'oif. The Pasal B'machshava Hech Mishkachasla. HaKatlam Mizbeach. How do we find that it's possible it can be puzzled by the machshava chutz l'zman outside the proper time? Hakatli avar hamizbech. You're killing it by the airspace of the mizbech because you kill it right up there. So the kash is that it's obvious, therefore, that how is that allowed? Because the avar mizbech is like the mizbech. So Maskeh Rav Shimi Barashi. So why don't we say going to Omer Hareni Moika Manas L'Harid L'Machar L'Lasal Haktira? Maybe we're just talking about a case. In order to be violating Chutz L'Zmana Chutz M'Kaimo, is you say I'm going to do Malika on condition that I'm going to bring it down tomorrow. Fine. So Hanichal Rava Dier Melina Moelas Barashim Mizbech. That there is a din lean on the top of the Mizbech. El Rabba Dier Melina Moelas Barashim Mizbech. There's no such machshava. So Rabbi Nami Mishkachas we can find going Diyamar Hareni Michael Manas. We do Malika of this oif on condition Harida Kaidam Amud Shachar that it's going to be brought down before Amud Shachar. Well, Laisalachar Amud Shachar and bring it up afterwards. Well, Hakisa Mia Tishut Dami Mizbech Dami, and we could at least according to one side say that it's the aver is like the Mizbech. If you want to tell me it's not, as we continue Peiches 1 Aleph, how could you sprinkle the dam of the chatas off on the bottom of the chut sikra? How could you do that? Havile yorud sharp psulin. So hechi zarkuhu amadama. How could you sprinkle its blood? Demaglahu hazahi mitzohi. So he said hazah. This is squeezing. Hazrika shvichahi. Boyd v'chi derech hazah b'kach derech zrika b'kach. Some Ravashi. If it was on the top of the mizbech, you're right. Ki kaimer de talunhu b'kanya my teku. There was like being hung by some type of rope or some type of reed, and there we have a teku. Okay, let's see some questions over here. Pay that was so. Again, let's see all the questions. So really wrap all this up. Question 2 again. So you have Ivarim Shapir Shumal Gama Mizbeach. They were removed from the Mizbeach before Chatzos, and they were returned after Mona Shachar. Imish Behen Ichol the Imotai. So we said there is a machlokus, but if we're dealing with it was consumed by the first Chatzos, Afal Pi Shelo Hayu Al Gama Mizbeach, even if it was not on the Mizbeach, it's fine. However, when it comes to the Shmonim, these fatty pieces, Zamachlokus, Rav Chisda says, Ein Behen Ichel Oilam, because it was after Amod HaShachar. Rabbi says, you have another Chatzos. Question 3 was, Heichen Ein Lina Moelis Ukoli Alma, Veheichen Pligi Moelis Shem Lina. So he said, Ein Lina Moelis doesn't do anything, Al HaShulchan, Gegan Lechem, Wovaina, Sha'olav, because it could be there many days. And the Machlokes is by the Mizbeach. Question 4. Im nisvar she'in chibur l'oilin, if you hold that there's no chibur, eza halacha acheres nisbar behechrach. So what are you also forced to learn? That avir mizbeach is k'mizbeach. You would have to say that if there's no chibur, you would have to say that there's no attachment, so it must be therefore the avir the mizbeach is like the mizbeach. The possible machshavu man di'emer avir mizbeach k'mizbeach hakatul mizbeach. Right, the mizbeach was cut, grabbed hold of it. So in that situation, we say like this: Mishkakso k'kain shemer haredi malika. I'm going to malika almnas l'hayrida. I'm going to bring it down kaidam Modashachar before. We also Modashachar. I'm going to bring it back after Modashachar. Question TA 6. Nivarim shepokim agam mizbeach vim. Ha'im Yachzer. Okay, we saw that. Question TA 7. Okay, so what's the din when it comes to a klisharis? So he says Indian ma pshita the mekanchin the Indian ma miboile. So the Indian kedoshim shein lehen or pidyon pshita the mekanchin the Indian chatchila the carve kama boile. Let's look at questions down here. This is question TA 7. Let's just find this. So he asked, Kli Sharis, what does it mean Mekadosh if it becomes possible? He said, well, we know that it does work, but he was asking, what's the din about L'chatchila? So again, what does he write over here? This is question 7. L'inyan Kedushas Haguf, Shein Lo Opinion, if there's no redemption, Pshitid Mekadshin, L'inyan L'chatchila Karab Kama Boile. Okay. Question TB 10. Avir Mizbech Mizbech Dami Olo. Be'ez Oifin Ha'evarim Ba'avir Upshita the Mizbech Dami Be'ez Oifin Masafgale. So I wrote Im Garar. I think this is the right answer, by the way. Right? Let's just mark this down. If you drag it from the ramp to the Mizbeach, of a Revach ben Hakevish Mizbeach, there's a space. Lo choshev, that doesn't mean anything. But glal sheroiv habehema al kevesh al Mizbeach. The majority of the animals on the ramp or the Mizbeach, not that airspace. Hasafik im logar, if you didn't drag it, al gabav mamish ba'avir hamizbeach. Adkan.